We'll just give it a minute to allow people to come on. This is part of our weekly Q&A about things that are happening in the Dáil, the politics, our eco-socialist view and perspective on things and our analysis. I will focus today in on really the incredible brass neck of this new government, the outrageous deal they have done to basically give jobs to all the boys with extra expenses, and then an extra scam to try and screw over the opposition. Like what they're doing, it's really something. And then maybe some parts of what's in the programme for government, which is pretty terrible, to be honest. Good question, James. We'll get to that. But also, please feel free to fire in questions and stuff. I have an interview that I need to go to at 1 o'clock, so I don't have loads of time. So I will have to, in a second, actually, this is a message here about, perfect. 1 second, sorry. Live, working. So yeah, I'll start. I mean, people, I presume, have seen that there's a new government in the process of being formed. That's a government that's made up of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, then a series of so-called regional independents. These people are led by Michael Lowry. He's been described as the kingmaker of this government. He's a guy who was found by the Mahon Tribunal to have behaved in a profoundly corrupt manner, along with a series of other findings against him. And then the Healy-Rae brothers have also joined in. And it's clear, so they came out with this programme for government that is just a mashing together of the Fianna Fáil manifesto and the Fine Gael manifesto. It's like terrible in terms of housing, terrible in loads of respects we might get into, right? But it's clear now that actually the main thing that they spent their time talking about was about how everyone could get a job, in particular all these independents. To get these independents on board, they've created an extra number of so-called junior ministers, which are positions with extra money. They've created an extra so-called super junior, which is a junior minister who gets to attend cabinet meetings. And then they've created a series of other jobs, and then they've given all these people extra expenses, right? So four independents are going to be some form of minister. You've got Michael Healy-Rae is going to be a junior minister. Marian Harkin is going to be a junior minister. Kevin Boxer-Moran is going to be a junior minister. And then you have you have Sean Canny is going to be a so-called super junior minister. And then there's another one whose name has escaped me momentarily. It will come to me. But I mentioned them, a Super Nintendo Junior Minister with responsibility for senior minister expenses. Exactly. That gets to the point of when you're a junior minister, you get paid extra money for being a junior minister. We don't think that should be the case. We think all TDs and ministers should be on the average workers' wage or less. We take the average workers' wage or less. We think you should be on the wages of people you're meant to represent, right? But as it stands, there's extra money when you become a junior minister. But in the past, that extra money came and you weren't entitled to some amount of expenses that TDs get, the travel and accommodation allowance, which is an allowance that goes up or down depending on how far away you live from the Dáil, because it's meant to be about travelling. But what they've done a deal, right, this is clearly what they negotiated, Michael Lowry negotiated, is being reported, is that they did a deal where they're going to get the extra minister money for being a junior minister, and then they're going to get the extra expenses, which would be worth like 30,000 or 40,000 euros for the likes of Michael Healy-Rae, because he's based in Kerry. So tens of thousands of euros of extra money going to these people. Do I not want to attract qualified people for government? I do, and I think qualified people are people who want to serve ordinary people, not people who want to line their own pockets. That's what they're getting. If you're any good, they would have asked you. No, I don't think. I don't think they would have. I mean, this is a group of people who are just interested in negotiating how many snouts can we get into this trough? You know, how can we all fill our own pockets. That's Michael Lowry is a man who was found by the Man Tribunal to have lined his own pocket at the expense of the public when he was a minister. He was the one negotiating this deal, and it has all the hallmarks of it. The latest scam that they are doing is that these people who are supposedly in... So they're in the government, right? So you have the 4 who are the ministers, but then... Yeah, actually, I think so. The 4 ministers, which is Healy-Rae, Canny, Marion Harkin, and Boxer Moran, right? So 4 of them are the ministers. But then there's another 4 who aren't going to be ministers. There's Danny Healy-Rae, who's not going to be a minister. There's Michael Lowry, who's not going to be a minister. There's one called Gillian Toole, who's connected to Sharon Keoghan, who's not going to be a minister. And there's going to be Barry Heenan, who's not going to be a minister. So effectively they're government backbenchers. Just like, most Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael TDs are not ministers or even junior ministers. They're just backbench TDs. So these are people who are committed to support the government. Michael Lowry said they're going to support the government in good days and bad. And yet, incredibly, they're trying to pretend that they're in the opposition. They're going to pretend that they're in the opposition. They're going to try and have a technical group, together with Aimtu, who are facilitating them, and Carol Nolan, who is facilitating them. They're going to have a group supposedly in opposition when they've already committed to voting for the government. And what's the significance of that? The significance of that is that they are taking staffing resources that are meant to go to the opposition, because they're entitled to government staffing resources, and they're taking speaking time that's meant to go to the opposition. So during opposition speaking time, when we're meant to be holding the government to account, questioning the government and so on, they're going to have people speaking, saying how great the government is doing and what a great job the regional independents have done in the government. So it's an incredible stroke. The issue is now it's going to be up to, and the rules are very clear that groups are for those who are in opposition. You can find them. These are Standing Order 170. If you search Standing Orders of Dáil Éireann, you'll find it online. Absolutely black and white. The issue is now it's going to be over to Verona Murphy to determine this. She's, it's very important that the Count Corla is a Count Corla for everybody, is impartial and so on. Obviously, she comes from the regional independent group. Michael Lowry negotiated this Count Corla position for her. So she's in a difficult position, but I hope that she will do the right thing and rule impartially and say that they can't do this. I think I'll give you an example of how this is just so blatantly wrong and such a blatant stroke. Right? Is Barry Heenan is reportedly going to be paid to be a assistant chief whip for the government. So his job will be to get government TDs, make sure they're there to vote for the government. So he's an assistant chief whip, getting people to vote for the government, and yet supposedly being an opposition TD, sitting on the opposition benches. Shane says Healy-Raes are needed to remove all the woke nonsense. Well, what the Healy-Raes have signed up for, showing that these are 2 people. So one of them objected to me calling them multimillionaires, because I think Danny Healy-Rae is maybe not multimillionaire, maybe it's Michael Healy-Rae is multimillionaire. Anyway, they're people who have lined their own pockets from the public, particularly from Kerry County Council, over years and years and years. They have railed against the carbon tax. We're opposed to the carbon tax. We're opposed to the carbon tax because it's completely unjust. But they've railed against the carbon tax as part of a kind of climate denialist thing, right? But they've given out about the carbon tax, correctly given out about the carbon tax. Whereas, like I say, we're against the carbon tax. And now they've signed up to a programme for government that commits to increase the carbon tax every single year. What an example of absolute shysters, people who are just in it for themselves. I always knew that was the case for the Healy-Raes, but now you have it. In exchange for a junior minister position for Michael Healy-Rae, in exchange for an extra close to €40,000 in expenses, they've forgotten one of their core principles, supposedly, was opposing the carbon tax. And now they've done a deal to increase the carbon tax every single year. So, absolutely incredible. And they claim travel allowance. Well, exactly. That's what they're gonna get. So Brian made the point there, and that's on TikTok and over on Instagram earlier on. James made the question. James asked the question, Paul, how does one go from a young progressive environmentalist left-wing TD to nominating Sharon Keoghan, which is what Barry Heenan has done? And Ryan on TikTok says, Barry Heenan running on a left platform and then grouping himself in with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Exactly. Yeah, it's in his case, exactly. It's a sheep in wolf's clothes, as in people who present themselves as being progressive on the side of ordinary people. like, there are good independents. I want to make that clear. People like Thomas Pringle is a loss to the Dáil. Joan Collins, not having her in there, is a loss to the Dáil. It's good we have people like Catherine Connolly, like Seamus Healy in the Dáil. But unfortunately, the vast majority of them are people who are just in it for themselves, and they get the benefit of being independents and therefore try and pretend to be all things to all people, not come out with a clear position, try and sound very progressive. Like he claimed during the election campaign, because there was various photos of Barry Heenan with like some Manny McGrath and stuff, and he said, no, I was just in a picture, you're kind of taking it out of context or whatever. But now, and then when he was originally challenged on being in a group led by Michael Lowry, he said, no, this is just a technical group for speaking time, I'm not involved in negotiations for government. Now he's going to be assistant chief whip for the government, right? He was joining the government effectively, and he's going to be paid for this job. And he was on Virgin Media, the breakfast show thing, on yesterday morning, and he was asked about Michael Lowry, and he implied that the remand tribunal was a waste of taxpayers' money. Basically, he's got no problem with the corruption that Michael Lowry was involved in. Incredible stuff. And that's why you just gotta, I feel really sorry. I'm sure there was like good young people who voted for Barry Heenan because they thought, oh yeah, that's a young progressive left-wing kind of person. And it was just an act to get votes. So you need to watch these people very carefully for what they've actually done, what they actually stand for, what commitments they're actually making, as opposed to the kind of vibes. Barry will get more for his constituency in government better than perpetual complaining. He signed up to a programme for government which is going to continue the housing crisis. So we've got 15,000 people homeless now. There'll be 20,000 people homeless by the end of this programme, by the end of this government term. There'll be more homeless people in his area. There'll be more deprivation in his area. There'll be more inequality in his area. So, no, things are going to get worse because of the deal that he's done. He's increasing the carbon tax. Yeah, Shane, we took all this into account. We still voted against you. Yes, you voted against me. That's fine. Like, you're entitled to vote against me. But I'm saying, where someone voted for Barry Heenan, he was promising progressive, anti-Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and he signed up now to a right-wing programme for government with them. So, in a sense, I've no problem. People vote for Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. They want a Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael government. That's fair enough, The issue is where people like the Healy Rays make a big deal of saying we're completely against carbon tax, and then sell that out and go in and agree to increase carbon tax. He will argue his promises for the area are more likely now. Paul, you've made fortunes on the back of the taxpayer. What do you do with your money for the poor? Hi, Jacko. I have not made fortunes on the back of the taxpayer. I don't have fortunes. I live a very ordinary life. I take significantly less than the average worker's wage as an income, and all the rest of my money is donated to local sports clubs, community groups, campaigns we're involved in. The money is used to try and improve people for the lives of ordinary people. Let me look. If I were a fish, what fish would I be? Maybe a shark. I don't know. Is a shark a fish or is it a mammal? Someone can answer that. James says, not this guy again. Hi, James. Jacko, a lot of comments there, Jacko. You alright? Shawnee says, ordinary people just don't believe what you do, Paul. You can see that surely after the election. But people voted for me. And that's why I got elected. James says, I've heard the phrase independents never want an election. Is it likely the government will go the full term? Hard to know. I mean, at the moment, okay, shark is a fish. I apologise. Apparently shark's definitely a fish. I'm going to Google this to make sure, but I believe you. They're not mammals, because they lack any of the characteristics that distinguish a mammal. They're classified as fish. You're absolutely correct. There we go. Learn something. Will the government go full term? I mean, at this kind of vantage point, it looks like it. They've got plenty of numbers. These are not people who are going to cause trouble for them. The likes of the independents who've signed up for them, they've bought them all off with various jobs and so on. There's more jobs to come for them. There's committee positions to come for them. Or like committee chairs to come for them, which come with extra money. But things can happen. If we have big movements in society, big protests, for example, on the housing crisis or on the cost of living crisis, governments can come under pressure and their terms can be ended early. So you just don't know, and I think our focus needs to be, how did I not know that? Sorry, there you go, I don't know everything. And our focus needs to be like, yes, on fighting them in the Dáil, but in the Dáil they have a majority. You know, they'll be able to push all this stuff through with the majority in the Dáil. We need to fight them in communities, in workplaces, with unions, to try and push them back. You know. Any updates on Leo and Robert Troy? Yes, Leo. People would have seen I won a court case in the High Court to quash the decision of SIPO not to investigate Varadkar, and then SIPO came back and decided we're still not going to investigate him, but here's some more reasons that we didn't give last time. So I need to talk to our lawyers again and to see, basically, we need to go to court again. And Robert Troy, people will have seen there was a damning finding by SIPO against him, but it was really, really, really mad and bad that SIPO, they had this finding about 6 weeks out before the election, and they chose not to publish it. It's like crazy. Actually, a very good journalist called Ken Fox got a series of if you Google Ken Fox, Foxe, and Robert Troy, you'll find an article he wrote. I don't know for which paper. He's a freelancer, so he writes for lots of them. But he wrote an article with this new FOI information about how they decided not to publish the information about Robert Troy. It was absolutely scandalous. Bringing back Bebo in the Dáil. Were you making up mad conspiracies that the constituency were redrawn to get you removed? Hello, Mr. Tomato Can 1. I was not making up mad conspiracies. I would have never said that. It is true, though, that the constituency redraw went very badly against me. I don't think it was a conspiracy to do it as part of a national process of redrawing the constituencies. But the constituency redraw put me under real pressure because it took the area I got most votes in the last general election out of my constituency and put it into a different constituency, Dublin Midwest, which is next door. Did I go to St. Killian School? I did. You're not alone, stuck with Robert Troy. Sorry about that. Any good books on expanding Irish politics? A good place to start is James Connolly, Labour in Irish History. You should buy People for Profits, small pamphlet on the question of left government. Any word on the freedom flotilla? Sorry, that's an effort to break the blockade of Gaza, which I was involved in. We were kind of taken over our ships by Israeli military in international waters, and then brought to prison in Israel for a week back in 2011. 2012 and the year 2012 and the year before, there was people killed in the Freedom Flotilla. I'm not aware of current updates. Are people running Shannon candidates? No. Will we support left-wing ones? Yes. We're particularly supporting Eileen Flynn and Francis Black. And just maybe to finish, in terms of Francis Black, the thing people will most know Francis Black for is the Occupied Territories Bill, which is a bill was originally introduced in 2018, delayed by the government forever, to stop trade in goods and services with occupied territories, including the occupied Palestinian territories. You might remember that the government just before the election said, after them blocking it since 2018, we're going to do this just after the election, and tried to give the impression they're going to do it, but it was always, I never trusted them, and now it's clear they're quite backtracking. They really are. That they're backtracking away from that. If you look at the programme for government, it speaks now only about stopping it doesn't reference the bill anymore, and it speaks about goods coming from the occupied territories, as opposed to goods and services going two ways. And I think the government is going to try and even delay that, try and push it off. It's quite scandalous. So it's very, very important that we get Francis Black back into the Seanad and really push for that as the very, very minimum that we should be doing in terms of the genocide we saw before our eyes over the last 15, 16 months or so. There's another very problematic aspect of the programme for government where, and then Michael Martin kind of came in publicly and said they're signing up to the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which has a series of examples attached to it which equate criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is real, should be utterly opposed. We fight it everywhere we see it. But criticism of Israel, including trenchant, strong criticism of Israel, which is absolutely deserved, is not anti-Semitism. So it's really, really dangerous. It's very unclear how this has happened, why this has been put in and pushed for left alliance. Yes. Is there a big march on Wednesday for the occupied territory bills marked from carriers? I don't know. I don't know. ML9696. Hello, I'm looking to evict some of my tenants. I know I should give notice, but not possible. Any advice? Don't evict your tenants, particularly not without giving notice. That is my advice to you. All right. Thanks a million, the Curtinator. I appreciate that. Hi, Rory Dunn. Small landlord here with one house rented out. Wonder why you say get rid of landlords. I don't really say get rid of landlords, but I don't think that landlords fundamentally play a productive role in our economy or our society. I think if there's always talk of small landlords wanting to get out of the market, even though there's actually the number of landlords in our society is increasing rather than decreasing, although still a very small minority, massively overrepresented in the Dáil. But I think basically if you want to get out, if you think that the rent controls, and we should have rent controls that actually bring rents down to affordable levels, you should just be able to sell at market price to the council, and then you get to exit the market if you find the market hard. The tenant gets secure tenancy, and we're expanding public housing stock. I don't think that our housing policy in this country should continue to be written in the interest of landlords, which is what it currently is, and unfortunately what the programme for government continues. All right, I got to run to this interview. Thanks, everybody. Sorry for not getting to everybody's questions. Tim, sorry, there'll be a vote next week on the formation of the government. There'll be a vote on the Taoiseach, and effectively all those who've signed up for the programme for government will vote for. It'll be Micheál Martin going first as Taoiseach. Anyway, I gotta run. Nice to talk to you all. Sorry for any questions I didn't get to. We'll come back next week. Bye bye.